Welcome to Radio Paul's Radio Rants, broadcasting to you on Cox Channel 37, Comcast 27 in Reston, and around the world at fcac.org/Radio Fairfax. This is a weekly show that provides you the very best in alternative news and views with your host, Radio Paul. This is your host, Radio Paul. Tonight's guest is David Edgar Love, who resides in Montreal, Canada. He is a former director of Rehabilitation Center for Substance Abuse. David's life is now fulfilled doing research on public safety, culture, disease, and illness. He champions human rights and freedom issues, especially addressing abuses attributed to Scientology and its many front groups. David was a patient at Narconon, one of Scientology's front groups, and in 2009 was recruited onto staff as a course supervisor, register, and graduate officer for 6 months. After observing and experiencing numerous human rights abuses, David escaped Narconon one evening with the assistance of an employee of the Canadian federal government. He has since gone on to lead a successful campaign in shutting down Narconon in Quebec, Canada, and is now touring internationally in an effort to repeat that success. Welcome to Radio Rants, David.
Well, thank you very much, Paul.
Sorry we got to a late start this evening, but this is my first show, and we had a couple technical glitches.
Yeah, not a problem. I was standing by waiting for you. I knew you were going to fix it.
I appreciate that. Wanted to kind of kick it off and just, tell the listeners a little bit about how you got sucked into Narconon and at what point you started realizing something was wrong.
Well, I went there as a patient, of course, and I was there from December 1st until May 1st. I went there for a drug problem. I had several back surgeries, and I was on pain medication and did drift into other illegal drugs. But I was in a detox in Vancouver, and I did go to Narconon in Three Rivers, Quebec, because a family member was there, and so I thought I'd give it a try. I knew nothing about Narconon or that it was affiliated with Scientology.
At what point did you started getting an idea that it was connected to Scientology?
Well, actually, probably the first couple of days in withdrawal, because there were some patients that were in there that had relapsed and were back in there, and they were talking about the place being Scientology. They were stopped from talking about it. It's forbidden to talk about it while you're there. But even then, when they had mentioned it to me not knowing anything about Scientology, it really didn't mean much.
So for you, the Scientology side started coming in more once you became staff, but what they were doing up to that point is all Scientology, at least from the perspective of what they claim is curing people. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Mostly when I became staff, but as I was progressing through the program, I became aware that all the executives were members of the Church of Scientology, and several other staff members too were Scientologists. And I started to notice that Scientologists were coming there to work from the Church of Montreal, Church of Scientology in Montreal. So it became very apparent that there was a heavy Scientology influence there. In fact, they even gave us some Scientology books, Evolution of a Science, to read and whatnot. And during my program, I was forced to view Dianetics video upstairs in the boardroom under the observation of one of the executives. So near the end of the program, I was pretty, becoming familiar that it was Scientology.
So even when you were in the program, that was clear that it was Scientology. And I guess one of the things that really is of interest to me is what medical benefit at all does Narconon provide patients?
There's no medical benefit whatsoever. I mean, as you go through the program, the time away from your drug-infested environment, and you're starting to eat healthy, and you're away from the drugs, and you're not taking drugs anymore, you're naturally going to start feeling better. But as they progress you through the program, you are coerced and absolutely forced to write success stories. If you don't write a success story, you don't move in on your program. That's all there is to it. So uh, a lot of the students tend to start believing that, yes, the Narconon program is benefiting them because they're feeling better, when in reality, they're only feeling better because of the time away from not using and away from their environment. So some of them do start to believe that, yeah, Narconon is working, and then you have to write a success story. Now, these success stories are used for them, for their statistics that they send up to the Scientology as promotions, and they use them on websites. And they also use them if you ever speak out against Scientology too. They'll use them against you.
And that was done to you, was that not?
Yes, it was.
So,
Yes. After Narconon was shut down by the health authorities, after I filed several complaints, they posted some of my confidential patient information on the internet, including success stories. So,
and
yeah, although they tell you it's absolutely confidential, and they'll if they are after you, fair gaming you, what they call fair gaming, or dead agenting, they will use the stuff that you say and write against you. Absolutely.
well, now let me ask you, when they use that material against you, in your particular case, you asked them not to use it. You had a lawyer write them and tell them, you can't use that. Is that correct?
Yes, because when you do write the success story, you tick yes, they have the right to publish, or no, they do not have the right to publish. On many of mine, I ticked the box, yes, you do have the right. But after I left, I personally sent a letter to their law firm, Heenan and Blakey, and demanded that they remove all, and I rescinded my authority for them to publish anything. So they abided by my demand, and they removed everything and agreed that they wouldn't publish any. So it was done quite quickly. But I guess in their anger, when they were shut down, they had nothing to lose really. So they started publishing my confidential information on the internet.
So they knew better and they chose to smear you anyway.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right.
And
Now,
there's investigators looking into it right now.
all right. I want to talk a little bit. Let's go back to the medical benefits of it. Well, what the heck goes on in Narconon? What does that look like on a daily routine for someone who is in Narconon if they're not getting real medical treatment?
Well, when you first arrive, you don't see a doctor at all. You go right into the withdrawal unit. They do take your pulse, blood pressure, that's it. And then they give you a handful of what's called drug bombs, which contains niacin, vitamin B, all kinds of stuff. And you take the vitamins, and then they start you on Scientology training routines, TRs. You sit across from another person, and you stare with your eyes open for a certain length of time, and then you stare with actually you start with your eyes closed and then with your eyes open, and then they'll have you do other Scientology routines like light objectives and stuff like that, and then they'll give you what's called assists on a massage table. And they'll basically say, feel my finger, and you're supposed to respond yes. And then they continue on and on and on and on. It's just a very boring, monotony thing until, some just fall asleep.
And none of this is proven to have any value medically or scientifically to curing drug addiction. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely not. In fact, when I left, I filed a complaint with the College of Physicians against the Narconon medical manager, who's also a Scientologist. And they investigated for 8 months, went right to his office and tore his files apart and brought in an expert in addiction treatment. And they discovered that there was no scientific or medical basis whatsoever in the Narconon program, and that it was basically could put the patients at risk or in danger. So he was banned from ever associating with Narconon again, by way of a written accord with the College of Physicians.
Okay. Well, you said you get there, they take your blood pressure. Who takes your blood pressure? Is that a registered nurse? Is that someone that's a medical?
No, just a staff member. And they're called withdrawal specialists. And what they do basically is go down into the basement of Narconon under the kitchen, take a 1 or 2 week Scientology course, and receive their certificates so that they're certified.
So this person who you meet when you come in has no official training by the state or credentials, medical credentials of any type. Is that correct?
Absolutely none whatsoever.
And at what point do you see a doctor?
Excuse me. Usually the following Wednesday, within a week or two after that, you arrive.
So you could be in pretty bad shape and go a whole week without actually seeing a medical
Oh,
professional.
absolutely. I saw people taken away in ambulances because when somebody arrives and they're withdrawing off of a Valium or a barbiturate, and especially alcohol, severe alcoholism, they're supposed to be weaned off with phenobarbital or something like that so they don't have a seizure. And that's what was happening to them. They were going into grand mal seizures and being rushed to the hospital in ambulances. So very, very
Narconon,
dead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Narconon does not allow, in many cases, those types of prescription drugs in their facility. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. Yeah. Yeah.
So they are claiming to treat people who have a real medical need and then depriving those people of their medicine.
That's exactly right, and that's why I filed a lengthy complaint, not only against Narconon, but Narconon Able, Narconon International, Church of Scientology Montreal, Church of Scientology California, and David Miscavige for practicing medicine without a license.
Okay. What is it
And
that they?
that's still being investigated.
I want to take a moment and talk about the vitamin regimens. One of the things that actually really scared me when I looked into it is that niacin has a daily recommended amount of around 500 milligrams, and in some cases they're sticking people with 5,000 milligrams. That's 10 times the safe level of niacin, according to the manufacturer who puts it on the side of the bottle.
That's correct. And Health Canada says the absolute maximum is 500 milligrams in a healthy person. People that go to a treatment center are not healthy. In fact, many of their livers are compromised with high liver enzyme counts, stage 1, 2, or 3 liver fibrosis. Some have hepatitis C. And niacin is almost like pouring gasoline on a fire. Niacin is extremely contraindicated for any person with a liver problem.
So in this situation, and as I understand, we talked in a pre-interview before, but to rub insult to injury, you have to wait a week to go see a doctor, and then they actually charge you for a trip to the doctor, in addition to
No,
the money that you pay to get into this place.
no. The first trip to the doctor is paid for, and then he does send you for blood tests. If you do have high liver enzyme counts, you'll have to go back again for more blood tests. You have to pay for the second visit yourself. In fact, you even have to pay them $5 to get driven down to get the test taken. I have the receipts and documents on that.
I want to talk a little bit about the type of people that work at Narconon. We know that they're not medical doctors, that they're not registered nurses or have any professional medical training. But I also understand there's some pretty unscrupulous people involved. I understand there was somebody that was hired with a criminal record with outstanding warrants, and they had knowledge of this and let him work there. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, he was doing weekends in jail and in a provincial prison, and he didn't show up. So it's classed as an escape. He was supposed to be in prison and he wasn't. So he actually hitchhiked to Quebec from Ontario with the staff knowing. One of the staff members used to be his girlfriend. So he did do the Narconon program. And then he was hired onto staff with the executives and the ESTO officer, fully aware that he had outstanding warrants for his arrest. Now, he was a nice guy. I mean, I wouldn't be afraid of him at all. In fact, I liked him very much. But it's the fact that the moral judgment and ethics of doing something like that when they claim to be the most ethical people on the planet.
Yeah, surely. I mean, you're in a situation where the people are in a tender, precarious situation. You really need to scrutinize who is working there, and that leads me to my next question. This is essentially run by Scientology and one of their elite paramilitary organizations. Can you tell me a little bit about Gary Smith and who he is and what role he plays in Narconon?
Gary Smith, he's the head person down at Narconon Arrowhead. He's a Sea Org member. He's the executive director down there, and he controls and runs everything down there on that base. Narconon Arrowhead has about 190 staff member, approximately, about 200 patients. Three patients have died there, 2 just recently, 1 this year. It is being investigated by the sheriff. It's very, very serious stuff. And the main problem of all this is with all the Narconons is that when the patients finish the program, they're recruited onto staff. So they have no experience, no knowledge. Their hearts are in it for sure, but they have no qualifications, no medical training. And Narconon doesn't do enough monitoring of the patients and staff. So many of the staff that are hired that were patients, they relapse. So you've got many of the staff there that are using. We had nine staff at Narconon Trouble that were using every day nearly.
Yeah, I understand that there were cases of suicides, drug and alcohol abuse. There's a picture, I think, running on Why We Protest somewhere of a girl who worked there. She's like chugging bottles at some wild party of alcohol. It just doesn't seem like it's very conducive to take people who are just coming out of rehab and needing long-term care to, a conducive environment to have them treat other people for their needs.
That's right. That's right. And there is no aftercare program whatsoever. And this is another a main problem. As a graduate officer, I was sending people right back into the same environment, knowing where they were going. When you go back right into the environment that you came from, where you were using, the chances of you, being successful are very low. That's a big problem too.
Okay. And in the real world, in the real detox world, each patient is individually evaluated for their particular needs. And in Narconon, everybody is rubber stamped with the Scientology tech, and there's no evaluation for their needs. Is that a true statement?
Absolutely, yeah, that's right. It's cookie cutter, and they can't divert from anything that are in the Narconon books. There's 8 Narconon books, and every word in those Narconon books is 100% Scientology. The books were reviewed by a professional professor from Alberta, and he reviewed all the books, and he said in a deposition down in the United States that there's not one thing in any of the Narconon books that is not 100% Scientology. And that's really how I started realizing that it was 100% Scientology, because when I graduated the program, they gave me a brand new case of books, $700 value, all still wrapped in their plastic. Numerous books, all on Scientology and Dianetics, and I started reading a few of the books, and I thought, oh my God, I was relating back to the Narconon books, exactly verbatim, word for word.
And I think we talked about this. These books, now, Narconon has gone to great lengths to claim that they are separate from Scientology, they're not connected, yet these books were actually, with the name Scientology on them, were located on the grounds of the Narconon facility, and they were provided to staff.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's right. There was yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So no, it's like if you're so separate, I'm trying to understand why you have the materials in bulk volume located on the property. It's just.
Oh yeah, there was several cases in a closet. I have the documents on that too. Okay. Stacked up, white boxes with, all sealed up. They were apparently donated, quote unquote, to Narconon to give to potential recruits after they graduated.
So it sounds to me like with what's going on with the patients, and then if you're brought over into staff, we're looking at tiers of grooming people who are vulnerable to get them into Scientology. Is that?
Oh, absolutely. Now, Narconon says that we don't recruit patients into the Church of Scientology, which is a falsehood. One of the executives or staff members at Narconon Program said, as far as I know, we've only recruited about 5% that have graduated our program here that are members of the Church of Scientology. And then a moment later, he states, but of course, we don't monitor them after we leave here. Well, I'm wondering, well, then how in the heck do they claim a 76% success rate if they're not monitoring? But he was right. They're not monitored. And the executives and staff that have anything to do with Scientology they know absolutely for sure that the majority of patients that go through Narconon are going to relapse. And in Scientology's own words, they said that unless you do the NED drug rundown, you're not going to have a chance of staying off of drugs. And the only way to do that is to move on from Narconon into the Church of Scientology and take the NED drug rundown.
So they're pushing Scientology by
Oh,
name
absolutely.
very early on.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. One of the things that really concerns me, we're looking at a situation where, and I just want to let any listeners know, we will be taking calls after we go to a break. Because we got off to a late start, we're only going to be able to take about 10 minutes of calls, and that'll probably be about 10:45. But one of the things that really concerns me is you're looking at people who are vulnerable. They are very compromised emotionally and psychologically, and there appears to be a lot of sexual abuse going on in Narconon. And one revelation I had in doing some backstory on this is there's almost a sexual pecking order. People almost can kind of pick out who they want to manipulate, and they basically do it.
Yeah, it's very predatory. It really is. I mean, if I count on top of my head now, there would be about 7 that I can think of right now where patients graduated and ended up continuing affairs with the staff members that were there, even as far as having children with them.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but I understand you yourself were targeted at one point by a senior executive for some type of sexual abuse.
Oh, absolutely. It was the ESTO officer. As soon as you start building up the building fund in a Narconon, they'll start bringing in missions from Narconon International, ABLE, and they also brought in the Narconon Canada, 4 staff members there, 1 from ABLE, 2 from Narconon International, and this is basically how they start bleeding off the money out of the building fund and other surpluses they have in their bank accounts, so they can funnel it up into the Church of Scientology. But yes, she did. She was the executive director was removed because the stats were low and he was incompetent as far as production. So they removed him. COS put the ESTO officer in charge, and she basically controlled everything. You got to remember, when patients are there, you're in Quebec. Three Rivers, Trois-Rivières is all French speaking. A lot of patients that arrive there have no money. They can't speak the language. So it's very easy for them to groom you and recruit you onto staff. And because there's investigations going on right now with the ESTO officer who did extort and coerce me into some things that I can't really talk about right now. Yes, there is a lot of sexual coercion in some I class as predators.
And I just want to validate this, that you said that the Canadian government is investigating that matter with you. Is that correct? That they're
Oh, absolutely. They were out in the field last week with investigators. Yeah.
Okay. And I
Yeah.
understand. I'm sorry. Go ahead, David.
Go ahead. No. Yep.
I understand one woman was actually raped at the facility. Is that correct?
No, not rape. No. There was one young lady who was sexually touched inappropriately. Digital photographs were taken of her. I was walking through the dining room. I knew this young lady who was very, very, very ill. I was walking through the dining room, and she ran up to me. She says, David, I don't ever want to see that blankety blank again ever. I said, what's wrong? He said, well, he took pictures of me and did stuff to me in ritual. And I said, just never mind, I'll handle it. So I walked up, and here was the guy. I knew who the guy was. He was being interviewed by somebody from the Church of Scientology in Montreal. And they said, never mind, David, we're handling it. The digital pictures have already been deleted off the camera. And I says, what? I said, this needs to be reported to the police or social services. This is a criminal offense. We'll handle it, David. We'll handle it. So it was all handled in-house, swept under the carpet, and the COS member, Church of Scientology member that did it, he was fired.
So this guy sexually commits
Well,
an inappropriate act, and they just see fit to fire him and cover it up and make it quiet.
Yes, they did. Yeah. And I received statements, and I received several other emails, and they confirmed it, saying, David, yes, whenever we knew he was in withdrawal, we wouldn't go there. We were too afraid.
Let me ask you a question. You talked about the fear that people have in Narconon of the senior executives there. Can you talk a little bit about things that they did that made people afraid of them?
Well, for example, when I was hired by the ESTO officer, I went the first day. I went to my mailbox and I pulled out a letter, and it said, "I am a porcupine, but when you turn me over, I have the sweetest meat you'll ever taste." And I took that letter and I thought, "Oh my God!" I took it to the ethics officers. I took it to some other staff members that I knew. I showed it to some patients. I said, "What am I going to do?" And they said, "David, we're not going to go up against her. She's the ESTO officer. She could fire us in a second. We'll be out in the street." I said, "What am I going to do?" "Well, just try and avoid it. Just try and avoid it, David." So after I left, I did file a complaint with the Human Rights Commission. And because I was a man and the ESTO officer was a woman, they didn't really want to move forward with it. So I said, "You know what?" I says, "Turn this around." I said, "If I was an older man," I said, "and a younger lady just finished the program as a patient, and I put a letter in her mailbox, hired her, and put a letter in her mailbox that stated, 'Hi, I'm a porcupine, but when you turn me over, I have the sweetest popsicle you'll ever taste. Then would you go ahead with the case?'" And the Human Rights Commission said, "Yeah, I guess you're right."
And when you're referring to younger and older, can you comment on how much older this person is?
7 years,
7 years. So she'd be how old, roughly?
60 something.
60 something. Okay. So you get a 60 something year old responsible individual who's lived a whole life that should know better, who's running a facility, and this is how she's sending out emails to staff. And yeah, I could imagine that if a person did that, people would be afraid because you would have to figure that person believes that they're protected enough to be able to do that and get away with it.
Oh, absolutely. As long as their stats and production are up, Scientology doesn't touch them. They're basically untouchable.
Let's take a moment here and let's talk real quickly about the money. Narconon supposedly takes in around $300 million, or at least since its founding. It pays the COS, but claims they're separate. You talked about the building fund, 5% going towards a building fund. I'd like to kind of just jump into some things you saw that prove without a doubt that money is going from Narconon into the hands of Scientology.
Excuse me, I can't tell all of it because some of it's in investigation, but I'll tell you.
I'm afraid we're about to lose you again here, buddy. Yeah, buddy, we did. So we're going to have you call me right back. Let's do this again. And we're going to get David right back. Hey, there we go. Sorry about that, David. I think we dropped you again. Can you hear me? I can see it ticking away. Boy, that's frustrating. There,
Hello?
I hear you now.
I'm sorry about that. I don't know who got cut. It doesn't matter. 10%, it's common knowledge.
We got a bad connection, David.
Okay. Everything's solid here.
I'm going to have to call you right back.
Okay.
This is the adventures of Skype. Usually works quite well here.
Hello.
Much better. All right. I think people will be happy with that.
Okay, I think it's common knowledge that 10% of the Narconon gross income goes directly to ABLE, which is a Sea Org entity, and it filters up into the Church of Scientology. I have a document that shows right from the Church of Scientology in Montreal. It's a $20,000 plus donation from Narconon RPRR right to the Church of Scientology in Montreal.
So I'm sorry, repeat that so people can hear that.
Over $20,000 donation right from Narconon to the church in Montreal. There's a list of donators, and the if you go down the list, you'll also see executives that donated directly to them too. And there's nothing illegal about that. You can donate to any religious or donate any of your income as you want. But Narconon is a different question. Donating straight from Narconon to the church. Now, when these missions come in, like we had 4, 5, 6, 7 outside staff, like from ABLE, Narconon Canada, Narconon International, and you had Narconon RPRR staff all at Narconon at the same time. It was the most chaotic, power struggle war you could ever imagine. But anyway, they're making several $100s a day each. So when they build up, and they're making a lot of money. Even the executives at Narconon will make between $40,000 and $60,000 each per year. You have a lot of married couples working there, so you times that by 2, you're over $100,000 per year, plus Christmas bonuses if the production's up. So I've witnessed blocks of Scientology auditing being purchased so that they can go and get auditing done in the future. So when they're making these big, huge incomes, it's going straight to the Church of Scientology. And once again, nothing is illegal about that part of it because you can do whatever you want with your income. But Narconon is supposed to be a charitable organization. And when you're making these high salaries so that the money can be funneled up into Scientology, it's hardly charitable.
All right, David, we got calls coming in here. So what I'm going to have to do is I got to go to station identification, do a couple PSAs, and then whoever that was calling can call back. But we're going to have to go to a break real quick. So just hang tight with me, okay?
You bet. You got it.
Dr. Sean Astin with a reminder for 18-year-old men about the importance of selective service registration.
When you register, you keep yourself eligible for important programs and benefits. If you're planning to attend college and need a student loan or grant, if you want to work for the U.S. government, or if you apply for some types of job training, you have to be registered with selective service. Visit www.sss.gov and click on Register Online Now.
Selective service registration. Do it today.
This is another National Wildlife Refuge Minute. Alaska Maritime National Wildlife Refuge is one of the biggest and most remote stretches of wildlife in the country. But that doesn't stop the Fish and Wildlife Service's research vessel Tekla from exploring the refuge's cold waters to count and monitor sea otters. Despite the threats of fur trappers, oil spills, and killer whales, sea otters have managed to endure. But in recent years, their population has been in decline. Thankfully, the Tekla is out there logging 10,000 miles a year to learn as much as possible about the sea otter's strange disappearance, so they can be preserved for generations to come. National Wildlife Refuges protect wildlife all over America. With over 500 refuges across the country, you don't have to go far to make a special connection with nature. Learn more at fws.gov/refuges. That's fws.gov/refuges.
This is Radio Paul reminding you to tune in each Monday from 10 to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Radio Paul's Radio Rants. We can be located on Channel 37 Cox, and you can listen live on fcac.org/radio-fairfax. Be sure to visit radio-paul.com for a full schedule and more information on upcoming shows. David, we're back.
I'm still here.
And I'm going to tell you something, man. The phone's just lit up. That's a rare thing over here. We got people definitely wanting to talk. But Colin Henderson beat everyone else in, and I'm going to bring him online now. Colin, are you there?
Yes, sir. How are y'all doing?
Doing really well.
Well, you guys are doing a wonderful show, David. You're doing a knockout job as usual.
Yeah, can you hear him?
Yes, I can hear
him. No.
All right, let's do this. Can you hear him now, David?
No, I hear you.
Colin, would you talk to David?
Yeah, David.
I hear you now. Yep.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So
okay, go ahead, partner.
You have a question or comment?
I've got just a couple of comments. Something that you guys talked on at the beginning. At what point did you learn that it was Scientology practices, being practiced on you? In my case, at Narconon Arrowhead, I found out via a word clearer that came down and spent several hours with me, and I found out at that point without a shadow of a doubt that it was Scientology, because they actually brought out a little red book called the Scientology Dictionary to point out the word Satan to me and telling me that I just had my first experience with my Satan.
That's pretty freaky and I'm sure it's going to be terrifying to someone who is in rehab and is trying to get off drugs, and they're having this stuff thrown at them that they didn't ask for and don't really understand.
Absolutely. It will. It can knock you off your course of recovery. I'm thankful that I was, there for myself and like many others. But boy, howdy, when I found out that it was Scientology, and I asked that question before I even went into the program, and it was completely denied that no practices of Scientology are being done here. And it's a complete false mission statement that Narconon has worldwide. And they're preying on the vulnerable minds of drug addicts, and it's sad. It's absolutely sad and very evil.
Colin, one of the things, I'm not going to toot my own horn here, but I've been an anti-war activist. I was even when I was in the military. And one of the things that helped me, and I'm not asking you to agree with it, but helped me see things a certain way were Vietnam veterans. I used to think they were wimps and liars and cowards, and then I started seeing things, and having had them there telling their side of the story made it, at least for me, more easy to cross that bridge. And I'm wondering if people like David Love and other people who've been speaking it out against Narconon and their abuses helped you feel sane and help you feel like you had somebody you could go to and help answer questions for you.
Yes, absolutely. I found a man by the name of David Tarowski. I wrote a story, my personal story, just kind of a brain dump, and he enlightened me through his website and conversations via email. And it was a godsend to realize that there were people out there that were there to help and to inform others.
So you weren't crazy because you didn't want to get in touch with your Thetan.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And what's going on down in Arrowhead? What are you guys doing down there?
We got a protest scheduled for this weekend from 12 p.m. Central Time to 6 p.m. Central Time at Arrowhead. Narconon Arrowhead is situated in a state park here in Oklahoma, land that used to be owned by the Choctaw Nation, which they purchased from. So it is a very large compound that they have there. They're way out in kind of the middle of nowhere. So we're going out and going to protest them, do a little public protest about the 3 victims, and especially the 2 most recent victims, and just let them know that the truth is going to be heard. And we're also going to be there to, help educate the staffers that are there that, yes, David was absolutely right that, they do want to help, but I'm afraid that they don't know what they're pushing upon other people.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things in order to help somebody is you have to be equipped to help them. You have to have the knowledge and the tools, and it doesn't sound like they do. I want to ask you, I saw something on YouTube. It was a rebroadcast of a television spot. I think it was from Fox 25 or whatever,
yes.
where they had a vehicle come out and tell you all were on a private road and you had to leave, and it turns out that was a public road. Is that
yes,
correct? Right. Were they taking photographs of you guys?
Excuse me, I wasn't there. That was the camera crew and the reporter from Fox 25.
Mm-hmm.
They tried. I was there 2 weeks ago, looking at the compound and kind of, seeing where the safe spots were and talking with the sheriff's department. They came up and tried to do the same thing to me. And I was standing in the same spot that Fox 25 was and just informed them, hey, this is a public road. Your private property line, according to your property taxes, are right there, is right there. Go ahead and call the sheriff's department, and good luck with that. And we stood our ground, and then Mr. Gary Smith came out with a senior ethics officer, and we actually got to have a nice little conversation.
Gary Smith would be the paramilitary Sea Org member of
yes.
Narconon. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, he is the CEO of Narconon of Oklahoma Incorporated.
I'm saying Sea Org, and that's their Scientology's paramilitary organization. We got a guy here who has signed a billion-year contract to come back and work for Scientology for the next billion years, running Narconon, who's claiming that there's no connection between Scientology and Narconon.
Right. And, there was a news article out of the McAllister Times-Capitol whenever they were trying to come into some of our public schools, the Purcell Junior High and MacArthur High School and 3 other schools here in Lawton. Gary Smith actually told the reporter, Gene LaFleur, there at the McAllister Times Capitol, that they were proud of their affiliation with the Church of Scientology.
Interesting. David, isn't the thing where they come out and tell you you're on property they know that is not theirs, isn't that typical of not only just Narconon, but how Scientology, OSA works?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's fine, absolutely, no problem at all to lie if it's the greatest good for the Scientology group, and that's all there is to it. They're caught in lies constantly, same as the executive director at Narconon. I think we should mention too that there was a death in the Georgia Narconon too.
Oh, yes.
Desmond, a young lad, and this comes back to that the patients are just not monitored properly by qualified professional staff. There's not enough staff to monitor them properly. And this young lad died because of that. And there's a huge lawsuit, including a civil RICO, moving forward against the Narconon.
Have either of you guys spoken to law enforcement in the United States about these deaths and things you think may have contributed to them? Because to me, if you're pumping someone 100 times full more of niacin than they should be taking, I think that at least the coroner should be looking at that as a possible cause of death.
Yes, the medical examiner's offices here in Oklahoma are looking into the deaths, the cause of deaths, and the Oklahoma Department of Mental Health is actually looking into certain incidences of recent. Regarding law enforcement, I've attempted to talk to, here in Oklahoma, the Oklahoma OSBI. I've talked to the various sheriff's departments, talked to just about everybody that I can talk to.
I'm glad you're there, Colin, doing what you need to do, and I'm glad you have David as a mentor.
Amen to that.
And well, hail Xenu.
I will stand by that they are practicing medicine without a license until I draw my last Irish breath.
I just don't know how if they don't have registered nurses and they don't have a doctor at the facility, how can they be doing anything other than practicing medicine?
That's right, because they are assessing you, they're examining you, they are prescribing concoctions to you, and then they are monitoring and assessing any adverse reactions, and then adjusting the doses after that. And that is right by the book College of Physicians and Medical Practices. They are practicing medicine without a license.
Here in Oklahoma, to add to this before I get off so that you can take some other callers, on January 28th, my great state of Oklahoma, the Oklahoma Department of Mental Health, issued Narconon of Oklahoma Incorporated a 1-year temporary medical detox license for Arrowhead Medical Detox. So I kind of had to congratulate the state of Oklahoma for doing something that I didn't think could be done and certifying an oxymoron.
Well, let me keep you on the line, and I want to apologize to the other callers that are holding, because we only have about 3 minutes left, and I just don't know that we're going to be able to get a question on and an answer. So okay. I just want to ask you, Colin, a couple of questions real quick.
Sure.
So we know that you were approached about Scientology stuff while you were in Narconon. Did you ever see any physical or sexual abuse either at your location?
I personally didn't see any sexual abuse or any incidences of it in any way, shape, or form, but I know it happens. There's reports that are coming out like wildfire. One thing that was told to me by one of the so-called nurses there at the MLO office, which is the medical liaison office, was whenever I was, coming out of the MLO office one day, they were pointing out a few people to be careful of. Don't have, sexual relationships with these folks because they have AIDS, they have certain STDs. They were just breaking HIPAA. They break HIPAA laws every minute.
So they're violating patient, some type of patient doctor, and they're not even doctors, but they're giving confidential information out that people have no business having it.
Absolutely.
Okay. I can't really thank both of you enough. I mean, what you're doing is incredible, knowing the track record of how Scientology terrorizes its critics. You two are definitely role models for people to look at. I just want to. You're welcome, David. What are your plans right now?
Well, I'm heading over to Ireland to a conference to speak against Scientology next week. So I'll be speaking there at the conference. On July 3rd in Ireland, I'll be on a live TV show. I'll be speaking about Narconon and Scientology again. And then I'll be coming back to Canada, and we're going to be taking it from there. I hope to have a book out in the next month or two, and it'll be exposing Narconon from the inside out, as well as Scientology from the inside out associated with Narconon.
And Colin, what are your plans?
My plans right now are fully focused on Narconon Arrowhead and Arrowhead Medical Detox. My plate is full right now. We're staying with pressures on the state to make sure that they do something about this, just like they did in 1991.
Very
Absolutely.
Good. Well, I'm going to thank both of you, and I'm going to tell the listeners to tune in next week on Monday at 10. I'm going to have the Reverend Billy Talon on. He goes around with a choir behind him and raids the offices of British Petroleum. He tries to exercise evil and greed out of ATM machines and cash registers and gets the public to be a little more conscious about what they're doing with their money. It's called the Church of Life After Shopping. And we're going to be updating our schedule regularly on radio-paul.com, and we're going to have a lot of progressive voices on. And yes, we will continue to hit on Scientology and Narconon routinely, because that is definitely my roots, and we'll probably have Colin on it at some point too. And I can't thank you both enough for being guests.
Oh, and thank you for having me.
Paul. Yeah.
Well,
You have a good evening. Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And
Thank you,
keep
Paul.
up the good work, Colin.
You too.
All right, have a great night.
Good night.
Hey, bye-bye.
This is Radio Paul, Radio Rants, signing off.